Howdy, folks. Let's give it a minute for folks to roll in here.
Oh, now you're in a cathedral, Drummond,
It looks like a cathedral, doesn't it?
or a catacomb
Uh,
or a wine cellar.
it felt like all of those things, but actually, the funny thing is, it is immediately adjacent to the Harry Potter like courtyard at the University of Glasgow.
Oh,
I
yeah.
literally, if you walk through you see that opening in the background. You just literally walk into this space. It's like, can you imagine being a student there and this is what you walk through on the way to class? I mean, oh my God. Yeah.
Then you just get jaded and forget. All you're
Yeah,
concerned
yeah.
about is the chemistry test coming up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They literally, my niece said she took, one class in something that pretty much looks exactly like the Harry Potter, dining room. I'm like, how can you get anything done in some place like that? Yeah, totally
Carly, you
crazy.
mean on the way to your transmogrification class?
Yeah.
Exactly. I swear, in one of those courtyards, you just look up, you can see the Quidditch game going on. It was just amazing. All right, let's give it one more minute here for folks to fill in, and we will get going. I will share my screen. Get ready for this. I think that looks like that one there. Good. Okay. Let me get the windows arranged here. All right, we're almost at 4 after. Excellent. Okay, it's turn to 4 after, so let's get going here. Welcome everyone to the June 10th meeting of the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group meeting. And as always, we will share our antitrust policy notice and remind everyone this is a joint working group of Trust RIP and the Decentralized Identity Foundation, DIF. So members of either of those organizations are welcome to be full participants. If you're not a member of either one, you are welcome to be here, but please don't contribute anything substantial so we avoid any IPR issues. Um, and we also always invite, if there's anybody new here, I'm going to get the bill list. It's a great attendee list here today. I can't even get them all on the screen. If there's anybody who wants to do an introduction, you are more than welcome. You just put up your hand if you want to verbally introduce, or you could just put something in the chat, or you can use our DTG bio page, which is there. And put a little note or links about that, and you can see who else is active in this task force. So, not seeing any hands up or anything. All right, quick review of what we're going to tackle on today's agenda. Check in on our 7 active, our 7 task forces now, not necessarily all of them fully active yet. And then we have 2 special topics. First, Martina is going to go deeper into and tell us more about the interaction architecture that she's been working on. And then we're going to dive into the topic of DTG credential spec and the trust protocol specs and the very lively discussion that's been going on about that. Which will certainly take up the balance. And then I'm just, in case you leave early, we're going to, Glenn is here with us today. I saw that he's attending. Welcome, Glenn, from Singapore. So we're really spanning the globe here today. We will, again, look at OpenVTC and get down into the nitty-gritties of trust tasks and how they could be layered. It'll be a good a sort of part 2 of the discussion that will start today. So that is what we're looking at. Now back up to announcements. I see some are already coming into the And welcome, Nicole. Yeah. Oh, that's right, Nicole. I think you've been with us before. Super glad you're here. By the way, I don't know if Brendan or Alberto, you want to say anything about your, or Carly for that matter. You're going to be demonstrating um, uh, keyring tomorrow at the Ecosystem Governance Founding Working Group meeting, right?
Yep,
Yes,
come on down to Ecosystem and Governance Working Group and hear Brendan speak again. Brendan and Alberto.
Cool. Do you have a link you can put in the chat,
I'll
and I
put
will put it into the
I'll
okay.
put that in the chat.
I'm going to put Nicole here. There we go. And welcome, Nicole. That's great. And other announcements, I see some are coming in, and I'm just trying to keep up with it here. Oh, thank you, Carly. Yeah, I'll copy that into the notes as well. I think I saw something from Riza. What did you post something, Riza? Oh, there we go.
I did, yeah. In San Francisco, there's the AGI 26 conference, um, uh, Artificial General Intelligence. Ben Goertzel is the main speaker. I'm a speaker as well. Emma Mostak's going to be there as well. It's July 27 through 30 at San Francisco State University. So for those folks that are in the Bay Area, it'd be a great opportunity to meet in person.
Fantastic. Excellent. July 27th to 30. Okay. I have that as the meetings as well. Um, any other announcements before we dive into the schedule? I mean, into our scheduled topics. Okay. Let's do it then. All right. So again, for anyone who's new, we have we organize our work in task forces. They're self-organized by members of the working group, and there is interest. I won't say anything yet. I know we have 7 already. I think there's a good chance by the end of the month we'll have 8. Actually, I'll just generally say there's a lot of interest in verifiable trust communities and what it will actually take to to operate one. And certainly the trust task, but also the policies. And even though we're not governance of trust communities is out of scope for us, but enabling governance of trust communities is part of what is in our charter, meaning providing the supporting work. But anyway, there's growing interest, as I'm exactly hoping there would be, in verifiable trust communities and what's necessary to do that. So potentially I have a call sometime in the next 10 days to talk to folks that are not currently active in the working group, but have really warmed up to saying, "Hey, we need a focus or a task force on verifiable trust communities and all the things related around that." So potentially, we might have another one. But anyway, our other 7 are various. A lot of work goes on asynchronously. All of our task forces have repos, repositories. And I want to highlight here that in our general repo, thanks to Martina's work on that, I'll put a link to this in chat. One of the things we have is you can pop down to this table of all of the task forces, and you have links both directly to the to the repos itself, but I also added to this table a link directly to the discussions section of any of those repos. So if you're ever wondering, well, what discussions are going on relative to any of these topics, the general repo itself will have overall architecture and things like that. But some of the topics we'll be talking about today are in these discussions. Actually, the credentials and the trust task protocols task forces are where a lot of that we'll be discussing today. So just pointing out that's what's going on. So we just have I think 3 task forces that have any direct reports today. agent name, ZKP, and Martina, whatever you have on your polling about the UX. So I'll just quickly start relative to agent names. Is Marcus here? No, not today. At Future Review in San Diego last week, Margie and I were there, and there was a great session led by Balázs Nemeti, who was one of the organizers at Decentralized Identity Foundation a few years back. He is now putting together something called the Agent Community, which is making a community-based application to ICANN for the .agent domain. They are opening another set of top-level domains, and typically they start, you pay for them at $250,000, or they go for auction. And .agent could go for a lot of doleros. But there's another process where you can put together a community application to say there is a public benefit to providing a nonprofit to administer a domain, and he's built quite a case for a .agent to go to the agent community nonprofit that he has set up. And there's I think a very modest fee for doing that. And he has 28,000 folks signed up to support that. So he's asked for if TrustRP would be one of the endorsers for that NLFD Decentralized Trust. So we've got it on the agenda for the TrustRP Steering Committee. If anyone else is interested in supporting in endorsing that, or just wants to talk to Balázs about doing that, I will put his email address in the chat. That's how you can reach him and let him know more. So Marcus and I had a call with him to go over that. They don't have a deep technical plan. It's more an application to see if they can get the domain. It is completely compatible with our proposed syntax for agent names because they are based on domain names, and .agent would just be essentially a premium domain for agent names. So that's my quick update on what's been happening there. Marcus was also very enthusiastic in supporting that. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to Balázs. I think there's a website too, although I didn't have time to find it last night. Okay, second on ZKP, we do have the repo now. It's not really active yet. However, this last when I was at Fire last week, I talked with Leif Johansson, the executive director of Ceros.org. Ceros is the folks behind the WW Wallet, Worldwide Wallet, and they have a commitment to saying they want to implement the ZKP libraries that they believe will be necessary in the EU. They've actually hired a guy named Peter Altman, who is the leading person coordinating the work at the European Digital Identity Wallet on ZKP, their requirements. And he's now working for Ceros. So he's setting up the ZKP task force at Ceros and inviting all the ZKP implementation and the academic communities and the implementers, folks like the Google Longfellow team, to participate in that, and wants to coordinate with what we're doing here. So I just wanted to let you know that he's very supportive and hopes that together we can get figure that out. There was also, we had a meeting with Hart Montgomery and the Berkeley team that's been working on ZKP for that specifically that we know we need for making proofs against the decentralized trust graph. So progress is going on, and hopefully later this summer we'll get that task force up and running fully. So Martina, over to you, unless there are any questions or hands or anything. It's going to be over to you for the next two topics. So
thank you, Drummond, and hello, everyone. For the first topic, the UX task force hasn't been formally created yet. Kind of. We were discussing about it, and I mentioned it last time very briefly, just for people to know that progress is on the way with regard to UX. There was a lot of many people who really would like to see that being created and rolling. So whoever would like to join, and especially whoever would like to be chair or co-chair of the task force, please reach out to us. I'm very happy to support, but at the moment I will not be able to be like the main chair of that task force. But I'm happy to coordinate and to support, and yeah, just reach out if you have any interest in either just being a member and participating, contributing, and also for the ones who would like to take like the co-chair role. Yes, so to the main topic, unless there are any questions.
I'm going to actually make one point about that again for anyone who's new to how task forces work. Every task force has a charter page, and they get a repo. If they wanted a Discord channel, and then they self-organize their work. So any task force can turn around and say, "Okay, we need to meet on a regular basis, however often or not." It can be entirely asynchronous, just ad hoc discussions and work on the in the GitHub repo, or they can schedule small time slices on our one weekly meeting here, or they can schedule meetings at whatever frequency they want. So that's why we really emphasize task forces are self-organized. So if you're interested in that topic, basically just let us know, and you can sign up for any task force on the wiki page for that task force. So just wanted to make that point about how task forces operate. Okay, Martina, over to you. Do you want me to stop share? Do you want to share
Yes,
for this
please.
next topic? All over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, it looks good.
Over here. Okay. So from time to time, I very much like to give a very brief introduction, unless a more extensive one is needed, but just to make sure that the ones who have been part of this journey so far, all of us are on the same page still, and talking about the same, and also to help, let's say, decentralized trust graph novices and friends of the decentralized trust graph who are not that familiar with everything that we're doing, to onboard, or at least to understand enough about what we're doing to not feel lost. So before I really go into what I wanted to share with you, I give a very brief introduction. Yeah, in case it works. Okay, here. So what we're doing, we're building the decentralized trust graph, which is for people, communities, agents, and devices so far. It's designed to scale also into the future to potential other actors. And it's about relationships and why a graph, because the graph is very nice to visualize the trust relationships between all those different entities or actors. So what do we have? We have so far, we're talking about people, communities, agents, and devices that can be actors or entities within the decentralized trust graph. And just to mention here briefly, Web of Trust is something that is referenced or brought up into discussions a lot, and the decentralized trust graph could be described, let's say, as an evolution of the classic Web of Trust. One reason why it could be described as an evolution is that we have different node types, as you see here, with people, communities, agents, and devices, and not just like generic peers. So this is one thing. So it's not competing, it's kind of evolving what all those great people did before. So how does this look like? So one question that is often raised and some confusion that happened was the nodes and the actors. Is it a representation? Does the node have any intelligence, or what is a node? And so let's start with the actor. Alice, for example, as a person, could also be a community, an agent, or a device. That actor eventually gets a decentralized trust graph presence, which means there was an onboarding before. To get a little bit more technical, the actor has a DID, at least one, and an agent infrastructure that makes the actor reachable within like that graph type of structure. And this is also a little bit an outlook with regard to VTAs. Glenn is for sure one of the key experts, and will most likely, as far as I understood it, give us another presentation next week. So you don't have to care about right now what it is in detail. It's just you have an actor in the real world, in the physical world, and after some onboarding, that actor gets a presence and is reachable or addressable via decentralized identifier, a DIT, and an agent infrastructure that helps the actor to keep its present in the graph. So this gives then a node view, so the VTA or the DIT or the actor, it depends a little bit from what layer you look at it, is, we use the term mapped because we found that it creates the least confusion while represented cause some confusion in our space. So we say the actor or VTA is mapped onto the graph. So an actor, I mentioned before, is at the moment a person, a community, an agent, or a device. And also with looking into the future, we define 3 categories or classes to be more flexible in case, in the future, anything new is popping up and we're like, oh, how could we treat it? So sovereign, in this case, is so far the human being that decides, in this case, Alice, for example. Delegate is most likely an agent that acts on behalf of, let's say, for example, Alice. And custodial could be a smart home or Internet of Things part, a sensor, stuff like that.
Martina, can I point out something about the custodial pattern? It came up
Sure.
actually in questioning in our session on the DTG at FIRE, the Future Review last week. Any when we started talking about decentralized trust graph as digital public infrastructure, and governments that would want to support support it for citizens, for example, as the state of Utah is proposing to do with their SETI, state endorsed digital identity initiative. The question comes up, well, what do you do about citizens that don't, they're not online, they don't have the right devices, they're in transit, whatever. That custodial role is something that the state or actors appointed by the state can play. So I think in terms of broad adoption of this infrastructure, if we're going to see, the decentralized trust graph at scale, then that custodial role is very important from a public policy standpoint. So I just wanted to sort of highlight. Folks felt that was a particularly strong feature of the overall architecture.
Okay, I think Nikki, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that custodial has really specific meaning, doesn't it, in blockchain? And this does remind me of early discussions about whether or not in sovereign we needed guardianship. was it not just another form of delegation? And actually, what you've termed custodial, if I understand the concepts and your point about the policy element, then there are two kinds of custodial kind of mandate. One is social, a parent acts on behalf of a child, for example, or a friend helps a neighbor out. And one is kind of legally mandated, like a legal power of attorney or a ward of a court or those sorts of things. So I like the separation is important because there's a different chain, like legal governance chain of delegation. Um, but
Nikki, what I think you're essentially saying is that one type of custodial relationship has fiduciary duties and the other one doesn't. Is how I see
exactly under law, it's different, and therefore there's like an external trust authority that provides that, like an LPA or something. Um, I just wonder about this term custodial, if there's a risk of it being confused with custodial versus non-custodial wallets and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. When I came up with the classifiers or the classifications, I just needed
So I don't
something
want to block
to.
the
No,
flow
no, it's
because
all good. It's
is
all good.
it's meant to be the
All good.
overview.
I just want to say
It's
I
like a
agree.
note to go back to this and just really clarify. Maybe we use the term guardianship, maybe we don't. Lots of people don't like that. Maybe
I
it's
think
simplified.
guardianship is too narrow, but let's discuss maybe in
Yeah.
another session. Um, Absolutely, and this is why I very much like these working groups, because these are exactly the things that people should pitch in when they think, hey, but for me it's not clear, or I work in a context or come from a background, have a background where this could be understood differently. So yeah, definitely let's keep that in mind and flag it and discuss it maybe next or in 2 weeks working group. Okay, the thing is we have three at the moment. We have three classes of where an actor could belong to. And the reason why I started thinking about those classes was really to look into the future, to have that flexibility, because as we saw before in the web of trust, it's not just a generic peer. It is something, and depending on what it is, whether it's person or something else, some different concepts or rules may apply. And so I try to find something that is broad enough that it doesn't limit us. It may still overall, but still gives it some structure. Okay, so the next, and this goes a little bit into what Brandon is going to talk about afterwards. I'm speeding a little bit up because I want to give him at least 20 minutes as well. So we had the notes here, and we have now also the edges, which are mapped relationships that are verifiable via credentials. So two of the most important credentials are the relationship credential and the membership credential, which relationship is clear is, for example, between Alice and Bob, so that they can prove that they know each other and are in a certain relationship. And the membership credential, which proves that an actor or entity, let's keep with Alice, is a member of a community. And so we don't only have the credentials that allow you to verify something, but there are also annotation credentials. Just to give a broad overview, the edge credentials were the relationship credentials and the membership credentials. And then especially here with regard to the annotation, we have, for example, the witness credential or I think it's the persona credential. So everything within or most things within the decentralized trust graph are provable or verifiable via credentials in combination with the verifiable trust agent, the VTA, and the different DITs. So when we look at the VTC, which is a verifiable trust community, which is kind of the mapped version of a community in the physical world, that community can have as many members as the community thinks is feasible. And communities within themselves or across themselves can also form so-called verifiable trust networks. So this is how it goes from a person or an actor as being a single node to a community that contains or has multiple members, and to a network which contains or has multiple communities. And this is how it scales. And so when we come to the main topic of this presentation, which is the architecture, I defined 7 layers, but please be aware these are not protocol layers. There was some confusion with regard to that, so I really tried to mention it on the GitHub page. It's more like a different lens or point of view on the decentralized trust graph with a specific lens. I can't say focus. It's really a lens that you look through and you block out the rest and just see the important or relevant things associated with that lens. I didn't call it though lens because it nevertheless has some connection, and lens sounds very much disconnected from each other. But we have the actors, the human experience or the access, then the management, the community. So these all depend to some extent on each other. And this is why we, for the moment at least, stick with layers. So for example, the question that should be answered through such a layer is who is participating, how do actors interact, then what is the roles or the duties of a verifiable trust agent, and so on. So it goes down until to the topology, where we call it the graph view that I mentioned before, with the nodes and the edges. And then we also have the important layer of governance. And what we found during several discussions is governance is one aspect, but it's very important also to consider the ceremonies. Okay. Which give governance a very specific meaning to a certain context. And for example, just very briefly, because Brandon is going to tell more about it, it could be that from a cryptographic or protocol point of view, how do you call it? A ceremony is, sorry, I lost the thread. Let's say a membership is proved and is complete, but from a point of a ceremony, that's not the case. So these are sort of the challenges that we are currently or are top of the list of being discussed. And one part of this discussion is also a differentiation between trust tasks and ceremonies. And this is now where I hand over to Brandon. Please feel free to ask any questions. As I stop, and Brandon, you can take over whenever you're ready.
Any questions? I don't want to shut that down. I mean, that's very rich, and I appreciate the visuals and the thought put into it.
I was going to say it's a wonderful if that's shareable, Martina, please, put a link to that because I'll start using those graphics like
What?
ASAP. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fantastic. And yeah, it really super cool, and it does lead straight into Brendan the discussion. Oh, Jorge's asking a question: can we define control? Oh, that's a big one. Um, um, yeah, and Otto saying lots of acronyms is true, but I think hopefully Martina does a good, she is explaining most of those acronyms. Well, given
Oh yeah, maybe. Sorry, now you mentioned acronyms. Just very briefly, Drummond, can you share the link to because this is what it was all about, right? I have created an architecture overview page on the main GitHub in the main GitHub repo, and this
yes,
explains high level or mid level the different components as well as the different layers. And also has a table with all the different names or acronyms and what they mean.
yep, yep. I just put that link into the chat. Super cool. All right. Well, let's make sure we have enough time. Brendan, over to you on our second special topic, talking about the relationship of the credentials and credentials specification and trust tasks and the trust task specification or specifications that we're teeing up. So over to you.
Sure, great. Yeah, thank you, Martina, for that. And I'm glad we had kind of the big picture, getting us oriented to where we are, where we're trying to go in our system. And so what I'm trying to do here is just to summarize some conversations that have been happening online, in the GitHub discussions, and try to propose some simple solutions that might work. So that's for this group to decide. Also, I want to mention a lot of this is being driven by Glenn's excellent work on the building this stuff and trying it out with real examples and getting the trust task specification. I think Jeff has also been involved with that. I'm not sure all the folks there. But I think that's really great work. And, we just are now bringing together work from the credential task force and the trust task force and seeing how all this fits together. So I just wanted to reference the comment that I posted just for reference. I'll put a link here. It's in the Zoom chat. One moment. Let me find it here. Get the link for you. So this is the comment where I'm trying to synthesize some things. I'll put it up on the screen here as well. One moment. All right. Okay, and so a part of this has been because this spans credentials and trust tasks, some of the conversations have been happening in both of those repositories. And so wanted to reference where this came from, sort of the impetus is we were realizing, and I feel like Sankarshan did a good job of summarizing it, some pieces that were missing, and Martina pointed to this a little bit, is we might have credentials which don't really have meaning outside the scope of a trust task. For example, if an overall trust task did not complete successfully, then some of those constituent artifacts or credentials may not have meaning. So we have to bind the context to the trust task or ceremony out of which they're a part. And then there's also this question of interpretability of, okay, so you have a trust task that happened within a certain trust community. And of course, we're trying to always keep things very decentralized so folks can make up their own trust tasks as needed. But, how do we then understand what came out of that trust task? So those are two key concerns that I was trying to address. And so one of the things also that I'll mention is Glenn has been keeping up to date trusttasks.org. And if you haven't looked there, there's a lot of activity. I'll put the link here as well. And so he's building out a lot of trust tasks and grounding them in real world needs. So that's super exciting to me. But as somebody who's been working on the credential, I'm like, whoa, okay, what are we supporting as a decentralized trust graph working group? And so just wanted to propose perhaps 3 layers of governance that we can think about. What needs to go in the core spec? Perhaps this is only what's needed to maintain the trust graph itself. So like credentials, maybe atomic operations like issue, present, verify, resolve. Try to avoid things at a higher level. Again, this is just a proposal. Then we have things that might be blessed by this group, and maybe that is what goes into trusttask.org, where it's okay, these are some recipes, trust tasks for things that people are going to encounter very frequently. And this has gone through a community review process through this working group and is kind of signed off. And then it goes into trustdesk.org. I believe there's a didcom.org as well, which is kind of a reference for how this kind of thing works. But then the next part is how do we make sure that we don't have any kind of accidental gatekeeping or centralization in our system? We're never going to keep up with all of the trust tasks people around the world will want to create. So, that's also kind of proposing then just the standard did resolver pattern for that of, hey, anybody can make a trust task, and then you just have a did, and then you look up the did document for it, find the trust task, and you can look it up. One other piece of this that I was going to mention is Glenn has pointed us, I think, in a good direction of combination of human readable and machine readable. I think that's baked into the trusttest.org. As we move into an agentic world, that's something to think about. I know we're looking at spec up, for our specs, but do we want machine readable specs for our credentials and things like that too? So in any case, we need to decide what is this group making decisions about, what actually goes into the spec, and what do we leave to other people to do for themselves. So that's kind of a governance question you can think about. And so now, again, trying to make some progress on credential versus what might just be a trust task artifact. So, you can imagine a trust task might have various data structures and things that it's operating over. Most of the world may not care about those internal things, but there might be external outputs. Like let's say if a relationship credential is coming out of it or some other kind of credential that folks need to be able to understand and interpret. We need to have some way to understand that. So this is kind of proposing that a credential is a durable claim about the graph that can true and stand on its own, lives on after a trust task exchange. An artifact is more just like a work product of a task. Mostly meaningful in the context of that exchange. So we can kind of apply a simple test. So is this need to be true and understandable outside of the exchange, the trust task? Maybe then it needs to be a credential. That's kind of a proposal here. If it's inside, it's just an artifact that we don't know, the outside world may not know how to interpret. Another key point is the context binding. Glenn has already built into the trust task a thread ID. So we could add to our credential spec a task context, which would link to the thread ID of a trust task. So that would then put it in context of the broader trust task and ceremony in which it's a part. And and then you might need to reference that trust task to know, did it succeed, for example? So there has to be some kind of outcome interpretability for that trust task to know, like, hey, did this complete successfully? Did it fail? Is it still in progress? So that seems also important. So the goal, that I was trying to aim for is the core stays small. This group blesses the middle, and everything else is kind of resolvable by DIDs. There are some implications we can think about of what this means for our credentials. That was another conversation happening of should we simplify down our list of credentials or not? And so you can think about it in this context. You might have your own lens. The other piece that I'll just add, Glenn had a comment here that's also worth considering is not everything supports DIDs. So he was referencing X509, carry, etc. They have other verifiable identifiers. And do we support them? I'm wondering if maybe we have to support DID because that enables our decentralization, and then you should, an implementation should support vids. We could talk about that. But so I just tried to lay out some of the key issues here and something that might bring it together. I'm very interested in your thoughts on these kind of pieces as we're bringing together the credentials spec and the trust task spec and trying again to move towards this goal of a trust graph that folks can really understand and work with, and can apply to a lot of use cases. So I'll stop there and would love to hear from folks on the topic.
Yeah, it's a super rich and deep topic. Nikki, go ahead.
Don't let me interrupt you. I was just putting myself in the queue.
No, no, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah,
In fact, I'll put myself in the queue. So let's just have a queue. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but we have 13 minutes, so let's go ahead
yeah.
and dive into it. Go ahead.
So I really felt I've found this conversation very helpful for kind of synthesizing, as you say, the kind of boundary between what's a trust task, what's a data object. And I kind of came to the conclusion that whether it's a credential or whether it's what you've called artifact data, I think there was also an idea about thread data and various other terms. Let's use the term artifact, which is here, which is kind of a work item within a product of the trust task necessary and an input into another trust task. And then the credential data is something that's portable and, as you say, lives on. So I completely support that differentiation. I thought there was a third type of data, which was signal data, which does some of the work scaffolding in between ecosystems. And the distinction between these is not what the data object is, but how it's carried, how it works functionally. So the credential data would be wallet portable and travel via a ZKP. The artifact data would be local by default, and only a content hash might leave the VTA. And then this signal data never really leaves the VTA. It's only a score that propagates. It's to do with reputation and to enable the network to learn patterns and to prevent Sybil attacks and the kind of infection of harms across ecosystems. There are, I did some analysis, and I think, as we've all been saying, that there are a very small set of credentials that need to go in the credential specification. There are one or two elements that I think could, in some situations, would be a credential, and in other situations wouldn't need to be. And then, yeah, so I think if we characterize how the data object moves and are relatively agnostic as to which data objects move in which ways down to the implementation, then that might help us. And I'm interested to see what you think about this idea that there's a third group of data, which is this signaling, which might be a reputation score, for example.
Mm, cool. Very, very interesting. Uh, Cool. We have 9 minutes left. I've got my hand up to quickly talk about Brendan. If you scroll down, in order to make sure that I finally, oh, you're gonna have to refresh because I posted my thoughts about this thread. Finally, I've been thinking about it for the last week, but I thought, oh, I better get something up there. Um, you have to scroll up just slightly to see the start of what I posted, but um, I first was addressing what are the core credentials we really need, and basically the 4 points there are the rationale behind the DTG credential spec. My rationale for why basically all of, and I put into the chat, we do have what we call the version 0.3 proposal, which we have an action item to now turn it into the first working draft, and now, at least the travel's done. I'm going to help coordinate folks to get that done. Um, but all the credentials are currently in that. The only one that I'm still torn about is verifiable witness credentials. But I think there's strong cases for the rest of their total of seven, no, eight if you include our cards. And the only one that I think is on the edge is the witness credential. And then if you scroll down to the balance of that post, there's three more paragraphs there. The second part of it is when you think about, and I too, I think Glenn's up next, and I think there are over 100 trust tasks right now at trusttask.org. The way I've been thinking about trust tasks from the outset is the minimum set, the set that I think we have to cover in at least called the baseline trust task protocol specification would be the set. You can see the bold line there, second to the last paragraph. The set of trust tasks necessary to offer, issue, request, present, and revoke the DTG credentials. That's what will create the universal interoperability of the baseline of the decentralized trust graph. However large or small that is, any VTA, if it's able to do that or the subset of that it needs to do to be on the graph, I think of IoT devices that may only be able to provide a credential, an embedded credential, showing its provenance or current state or whatever. But that feels to me like that minimum, and I wanted to get that into this discussion. And I will yield the rest of my time over to Glenn, who's so deep in trust tasks that well, we're going to tee him up for next week. Go ahead, Glenn.
Thanks, Drummond. Just Brendan, well done. I think there's no material difference to what's being implemented and used, so it's good clarifications. The couple of points I'll just add would be trust tasks do way more than just DTG. Just think about it as DTG would be a category within trust tasks, and we have not defined any of the DTG category trust tasks. So these would be, Drummond, to your point, I'm requesting the VTC to generate a membership credential for me. I want to check something. They would be examples of the DTG tasks. Nikki, your point, very good. I think I've deliberately kept that out of the trust tasks, deliberately from an architecture perspective for two reasons. One is to keep the trust tasks extremely generic and actually protocol agnostic, which makes them very easy to implement and understand. And the second reason is I think there's a missing layer. And the missing layer is exactly what you are articulating, which is almost what's the rules of the presentation of some of this data? Is that ZKP only? And this starts to get into a very kind of gray area of what would be the policy a VTC has for its join ceremony, for example. One VTC may have a set of policies that says to join, I want to see your passport raw data. And another VTC may say, I just need to know that you're not in a sanctioned country or that you are an adult, and I'm okay with that being a ZKP presentation. That's nothing to do with a trust task definition and nothing to do with credential definition. That's getting into the ceremony rules as to what the independence of different VTCs may or may not allow. and starts crossing over into what are you willing your VTA to send via different presentation formats, and it starts to cross over into things like my terms or others where you might say, I will never share my date of birth, and if that means I can't join a VTC that requires a date of birth, not a proof of age, ZKP, then so be it. I will not join that VTC as you go through it. So and the ceremony part, it may be a trust task. I don't know yet, or it may be something similar, which is there's a registry of ceremonies that you can look and they actually get signed off, and therefore a trust task. And Brendan, I think this is what you're alluding to. There's some linkage between a trust task's ID or thread ID to the ceremony ID to potentially the credential ID so that you can safely and securely say, hang on, all of these artifacts are actually linked to a single something end to end without losing any of the privacy, because at the end of the day, they're just random UUIDs that come through this. So I think that the ceremony part is a big gray area at the moment, but we'll be able to give some clarity to that next week. That's all I just wanted to say on that, if that helps clarify or muddy the waters more.
I think that link is going to be quite important. And just to point out, folks, that will be our key topic. Glenn's going to be able to join us next week to dive into that. Okay, I only put up my hand to just make that point. So, Nikki, over to you.
I was just going to say, I think there's a whole layer above trust tasks, which I characterize as interaction patterns. And what we've been talking about as ceremonies, we've been really focused on joining ceremonies and things like that. I think there are two interaction patterns which are ceremonies, and then there are others interaction patterns like negotiated consent, which actually Wen Jin's been doing some work on in AIM, adjudication, subscription. So there's yeah, I think, and to your point in the post, Brendan, about where's that line and scope between a trust task and a credential spec on the one hand, but also with these ceremonies, these interaction patterns. And I think for simplicity's sake, it would be better to take the interaction patterns or ceremonies and put them in a separate bucket, because each of those interaction patterns is composed of many different trust tasks in different combinations.
Yes, orchestration layer. Brendan, we're going to give you the last word because you started this thread. Thank you. And we just have 1 minute left.
Yeah, no, I'm really appreciating what folks are saying. And yeah, this is why we have to come together sometimes to clarify. And Drummond, I want to, call out for you with your terminology hat. I think this is really helpful because I think I was confusing trust tasks with maybe ceremonies. Maybe we still need an official, we've had various words, an exchange, a ceremony, a trust task. And so I think this is something to disentangle, and Glenn and Nikki are pointing to that. So I think that will really help. But so I think we're on the right track here, is my feeling. And yeah, I appreciate everyone's points.
Yeah. And I just want to reinforce with folks because this is bringing a lens. We had a TechnoStack working group meeting earlier this week. We only meet quarterly. This layering of protocols at Trust RP Layer 3 is exactly what we've always anticipated. The same way, in the TCP/IP stack, on top of IP, there's a fairly small amount of layering, but typically it does go 2 or 3 levels. I think we're going to end up the same thing here, only they're going to be many more, finer grained protocols at each level. The thing I'm most excited about, and what Glenn's been leading at OpenVTC, and I really, before next week, I want to give everyone the assignment: go just review a bunch of the trust tasks, get yourself familiar with what's at trusttask.org, because it's really going to give you a lens on how rich the dialogue between verifiable trust agents can be. But if we get this right, and verifiable trust agents start doing real work for people. I have a presentation to Consumers International later today to say, hey, what can TrustAsk do for consumers? I thought I could put that together in 15 minutes last night. It was an hour and a half of like, oh my God, it's going to blow their minds what it can do over time, right? As we get this right. So we're getting to the heart of how we deliver value, and it's going to drive the adoption of the trust graph. I know we're over time.
And I
Thank
mean,
you,
that's a little
everybody.
related to the conversation tomorrow in the AIM group as well. What can we do with all this stuff ultimately? And so that's focused
Yes,
more on fiduciary agents. So if anybody wants to join an hour later than today's meeting, tomorrow, that's when the AIM work group meeting. So it's very non-technical talk tomorrow. We're just talking about objectives for
exactly. There's a
fiduciary.
lot of synergy. We refer to the AIM, AI and Human Trust Task Force that Wenjing chairs, and Steve, you're very active there. It's on the Trust RP calendar for anyone who's able to join tomorrow. I will not be there tomorrow because I have a very important breakfast related to this stuff. But well, be it there, I may be part of the meeting. Anyway, thank you, everybody. As always, we never have enough time. We are going to start to figure out, starting to schedule a special topic meeting so we can go deeper on some of these things. But it's fantastic to see all this momentum. And again, next week we will feature Glenn. We'll dive into TrustAsk and that whole question of the layering of ceremonies. And with that, we have to call it a day and on to everyone's next calls. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye all.